I'm Linda Brooks, 65 years old, and I thought my life had already shown me every kind of heartbreak. But on a Saturday evening, around 7:30, in a glass-walled penthouse overlooking the water in Seattle, my past walked through the door, wearing a different name and the same devastating smile. I was standing with a glass of champagne when it happened. The moment I saw him, my body froze. My hand slipped. The glass shattered across the marble floor, and the sound echoed through the room like my own heart breaking again. Guests turned, polite eyes filled with surprise, but I couldn't move. All I could do was stare. There he was, the man who had destroyed me years earlier, now introducing himself as my daughter Emily's fiancé. He carried himself with charm, shaking hands and winning smiles, the same way he had won me over when I was vulnerable and grieving. I felt the blood drain from my face. Inside, memories started colliding with the present. 7 years ago, I had been widowed and lost in sorrow, and he appeared like a rescuer. In reality, he stripped me of trust, of money, of dignity, and now here he was again, with my daughter on his arm, acting as if we were strangers meeting for the first time. I forced a smile, though my chest ached with panic. I told myself to breathe, to hold it together, because this wasn't just about me anymore. This was about Emily. As I stood in that shining room full of laughter and clinking glasses, I knew I was staring into a storm only I could recognize. And in that moment, one thought became crystal clear. I could not let history repeat itself. And yet, a deeper question haunted me. How could I possibly stop him without losing my daughter 7 years earlier? My life had unraveled in the cruelest way. My husband Robert died suddenly, and at 58, I was left alone, drowning in grief. I remember those months clearly, Seattle rain falling day after day, the house echoing with silence, me walking into coffee shops just to hear other people's voices. That's when Daniel appeared. He looked like comfort wrapped in a warm smile. He listened. He knew when to nod, when to offer a hand across the table. Back then, I was fragile. He made me feel like I mattered again. He said the right things, touched the right chords, and for a while, I believed he was my second chance at happiness. For almost 10 months, he gave me the illusion of safety and affection. Then, like a magician pulling a rug from under my feet, he was gone. Along with him disappeared $75,000, the money from Robert's life insurance that was meant to secure my future. The betrayal cut deeper than the money. It shattered my ability to trust. Now, standing at Emily's engagement party, I was staring at the same man. He had traded in his old name, Aaron Miller, for a polished new identity, Daniel Pierce. Everything about him looked clean, respectable, successful. But I knew better. I could see the cracks in the mask because I had once fallen for the same performance. As I watched Emily lean into him with joy in her eyes, my stomach turned. I remembered how easily I had believed his charm. I remembered how long it took me to crawl back from the shame of being fooled. And here he was again, trying to repeat the same play, but this time with my daughter as his target. The stakes were much higher now. Emily wasn't just any woman. She had her father's trust fund, nearly $25,000 set to mature when she turned 35. It would be more than enough bait for a man like him. My heart sank as the truth settled over me. I wasn't imagining this. I wasn't overreacting. History wasn't circling back. It was standing right in front of me. I knew then I had to find out what he was really after. Sleepless nights became my new routine. At 2 in the morning, when the city was quiet and my mind refused to rest, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop glowing in the dark. I typed his name into search bars, cross-checked records, scrolled through pages that led nowhere. The internet told me what my gut already knew. Daniel Pierce seemed too perfect. His life only appeared in 2020 as if he had been born 5 years ago. Before that, no trace. Clean records, clean credit, too clean to be real. I hired Carmen Ortiz, a private investigator known for digging into stories families didn't want to believe. When she laid out the files, the pattern chilled me. Multiple cities, multiple women, each one successful, each one vulnerable, each one left broken. Phoenix, Nashville, Denver. It was all too familiar. I decided to test him myself. Sunday dinner had always been Emily's tradition. At 7 in the evening, I sat at her dining table while Daniel played the role of perfect fiancé, cooking an elaborate Italian meal. He laughed easily, charmed effortlessly, remembered names and details as if people were puzzles he'd already solved. I studied every word, every gesture, searching for cracks. Then it happened. In casual conversation, he mentioned living in Los Angeles, then Phoenix, then Nashville, exactly the same trail Carmen had uncovered. My fork froze mid-air. To Emily, it sounded like harmless travel. To me, it was confirmation. I smiled and nodded, but inside my heart pounded with the knowledge that the man across from me was the same predator who once gutted my life. And now he was rehearsing his act on my daughter. I knew then this wasn't paranoia. This was a pattern. The question was, how long until he turned Emily against me completely? Not long after that dinner, the wedge began to show. Emily grew distant in ways I had never felt before. She skipped our weekly calls, canceled lunches, and when we did meet, I could sense her eyes carried questions about me, not about him. I recognized the signs. Daniel was already working to paint me as the overprotective mother who couldn't let go. The breaking point came when Emily told me it might be better if I stepped back from the wedding plans. Her words stung deeper than I expected. For decades, it had been just the two of us against the world. Now, for the first time, I felt like an intruder in my own daughter's life. That night, around 11:15, I sat alone in my kitchen. The house was dark except for the glow above the stove, and tears came harder than they had in years. I wasn't just grieving Robert anymore. I was grieving the possibility of losing Emily to the very man who had already stolen so much from me. But something shifted inside me as the tears dried. Anger rose, not reckless anger, but sharp, focused anger. If Daniel wanted me out of the way, then my absence was exactly what he needed. And if that was his plan, I couldn't give him the satisfaction. I realized I had two choices: retreat and let him tighten his hold on Emily, or step into the storm and fight back with everything I had learned. The grieving widow he once fooled was gone. In her place stood a mother who refused to lose twice. At 6:30 the next morning, I picked up the phone and called Carmen. I told her we weren't finished. In fact, the fight was just beginning. Carmen and I sat together at my dining table, the same table where Robert and I had once planned family trips and birthday dinners. Now it was covered in photographs, timelines, and notes that made my stomach twist. Each page told a story of another woman who had believed in Daniel's lies. I saw their faces: Rebecca in Denver, Jennifer in Nashville, Catherine in Phoenix. All successful, all intelligent, all at pivotal moments in their lives. Divorce, inheritance, a business sale. Each of them had resources that could be drained. Each of them had trusted him. And each of them ended up broken in ways that felt painfully familiar. But then Carmen showed me something that made my heart pound harder. These women weren't random. Each was connected to another victim, often by blood, an aunt, a sister, a cousin. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about control, about weaving himself through families and destroying them piece by piece. I stared at the board, at the red lines linking names and cities, and I felt the weight of realization. Emily wasn't just another woman to him. She was the next branch in his twisted family tree, and because of me, she was the perfect target. I couldn't let Emily's picture be added to that board. I had to outthink him, outplay him, and make him reveal himself. The challenge was terrifying, but I knew one thing for certain: I was the only person who could stop him. And to do that, I would have to make him believe I was giving up. I knew I couldn't confront Daniel head-on. If I accused him too soon, he would twist everything, and Emily would see me as nothing but a jealous, bitter mother. So I did something that felt unnatural to me. I pretended to surrender. With Tessa's help, I staged a minor accident, a simple fall at home, nothing dramatic, just enough to make it believable that I needed a few days of rest. Emily worried, of course, but I insisted she stay focused on her work and her upcoming wedding. I wanted Daniel to hear that I was weak, out of the picture, no longer a threat. The next afternoon, around 2 o'clock, he showed up at Tessa's apartment carrying a pot of homemade chicken soup. His smile was perfect, his concern so polished it could have fooled anyone. He told me he wanted us to have a good relationship, that Emily's happiness depended on peace between us. Outwardly, I nodded and thanked him. Inwardly, I studied every word, every pause, every glance. It was then that his true intentions slipped through the cracks. He spoke about mistakes in his past, about wanting redemption, about protecting Emily from disappointment. On the surface, it sounded noble, but underneath, it was chilling. The way he spoke of protection sounded less like love and more like control. He spoke of finances, decisions, the future always with himself at the center, as if Emily would need him to manage every part of her life. And then came the line that made my blood run cold. He hinted that if something were to happen to me, another accident, a health scare, Emily would have no one but him to lean on. The message was clear. He wasn't just trying to separate us. He was planning a future where I no longer existed at all. I sat there, spooning soup I couldn't swallow, realizing I had walked into his test. And though I survived that afternoon, I knew I was running out of time. The next step had to be bigger than me. I needed help from people who understood predators like him. After that afternoon with the soup, I knew I couldn't fight Daniel alone. His charm was too convincing, his lies too carefully woven. I needed people who could see past the surface. That's when Carmen connected me with Special Agent Nathan Lee from the FBI. Sitting across from him in a quiet office, I felt the weight of everything I had carried alone. Nathan listened carefully, then slid a thick file across the table. Inside were photographs, timelines, reports that stretched across years. Daniel wasn't just a con artist. He was a predator who had left a trail of financial fraud, ruined lives, and suspicious deaths in multiple states. Women who disappeared within months of meeting him. Women whose assets mysteriously shifted before they were gone. The evidence was strong, but not strong enough. Daniel had mastered the art of staying just outside the reach of the law. What the FBI needed was his own words, proof of intent. Something undeniable. and they believed his ego would be the key. We crafted a plan that made my stomach tighten. I would confront him directly, not with accusations of my own pain, but with the truth that I had connected the dots. My role was to make him believe I was about to tell Emily everything. If his pride took the bait, he would reveal the financial scheme he had set up. That confession would give the FBI what they needed. It terrified me. The idea of sitting alone in his apartment, wired with a recording device, while agents waited outside. But I also knew this if I didn't take that risk. Emily's life and future would be the price. The confrontation was set for Saturday at 6:30 in the evening. Saturday evening came faster than I wanted. At 6:30, I stood outside Daniel's apartment building with a wire taped under my blouse. My heart pounding so hard, I wondered if the microphone would pick it up. The FBI team waited outside, ready. But once I walked through that door, it would be just him and me. The apartment felt like a showroom, expensive furniture, clean surfaces, but no trace of real life. It was a place for passing through, not for building a future. I reminded myself why I was there. I had to make him believe I had pieced together his past, and that I was prepared to tell Emily. I started carefully, talking about the women, the cities, the years that didn't add up. I let my words hang heavy, as if I was finally lifting a burden I'd carried too long. His smile faded, his stillness sharpened, and I saw the mask slipping. And then came the moment we had been waiting for. He leaned closer, his voice lower, almost daring me. He admitted that Emily had already signed financial papers documents that would merge her trust fund with his accounts. He said it like a victory, like proof of how much she trusted him. He mentioned Monday morning, 9 o'clock, when the money would be his to control. I kept my face calm, but inside, I knew we had it. The words were out. The trap was sprung. And yet, what happened next would change everything. The second those words left Daniel's mouth, the door burst open. FBI agents swarmed the apartment, their commands sharp, their weapons drawn. For a moment, time slowed. I watched him straighten, almost casually, as if even this was part of his act. His confidence didn't falter. He looked at me with that same smug smile I remembered from 7 years earlier, and in his eyes I could see it. He believed he had already won. But then came the moment that turned everything upside down. From behind the agents, Emily stepped into the room. My daughter. Her face was pale, her eyes sharp with fury, and in that instant I realized she had known more than she had let on. She looked directly at Daniel, not at me, and I saw strength I hadn't recognized before. Emily wasn't the naive victim I feared she was becoming. She had been working with the FBI. The documents Daniel bragged about, the ones he claimed she had signed, were nothing more than props. Fake papers designed to tempt him into exposing himself. I felt my knees weaken, not from fear, but from sheer relief. Emily had seen through him. She had chosen to fight alongside me, even when I thought I had lost her completely. Daniel's composure cracked then. His smooth mask fell apart as the realization hit him. The two women he had tried to divide had stood together against him. He was handcuffed, led away, still muttering about how clever he was, how close he had come. But I wasn't listening to him anymore. My eyes were locked on Emily. She moved toward me, and for the first time in weeks, we were on the same side of the storm. The FBI had the confession they needed. The financial scheme was exposed. And the predator, who once believed he could outsmart everyone, was finally caught in his own web. Yet, as I stood there holding my daughter's hand, I knew this story wasn't just about his downfall. It was about something far more powerful, the strength of family, and how love can withstand even the cruelest attempts to break it. 2 years later, Daniel, whose real name turned out to be Marcus Webb, was sentenced to life in prison. The courtroom echoed with the testimonies of women he had deceived, families he had broken, and evidence of money trails that stretched across state lines. Justice, though long delayed, had finally arrived. Emily returned to her life with scars, but also with strength. She became cautious, not fearful, and more deliberate with the people she let into her circle. Our Sunday dinners at 7 in the evening returned. Simple meals filled with laughter and the comfort of knowing we had survived something together. She still checks with me before making big financial decisions. Not because she doubts herself, but because she now values partnership over blind trust. As for me, I learned a truth I wish I had understood earlier. Sometimes protecting the people you love doesn't mean shielding them from every pain. Sometimes it means trusting them enough to fight alongside you when the storm comes. Family will always face trials, but when love is stronger than fear and truth stronger than lies, there is no predator powerful enough to break that bond. If my story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And tell me, have you ever trusted your instincts and been proven right? Your voice might be the reminder someone else needs today.